I was happy. It's like, well, I'm good. We can go home. Like, caught 2 Mearns quail today. And Jacob was like, really? You're not going to go for a limit? Like, really? Like, all right, well, we'll go the long route back to the truck. And lo and behold, another probably 100 yards or so, and found another cubby. I don't remember what dog locked up on point that time, but flush it, and I get goosebumps just thinking about it. A tail chase, foot flush on a Mearns quail with a Cooper's hawk, goshawk, an accipiter in general. It's, yeah, and seeing it 3 times in a row and all of them ending in a catch. That's, yeah, one of the highest of the highs I've had with falconry.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Told podcast, and we are about halfway through our series brought to you by the Arizona Falconers Association. And I want to go ahead before we get started and do like I've done the last handful of episodes here and give a quick shout out to one of our newest sponsors, being Baba Yaga Crafts from Poland. You all have heard me sing his praise now a few times on the podcast here, and obviously I can't say enough good things about the quality of the equipment that he makes. Everything from his new hybrid jesses to the anklets that he makes with the Marshall Easy Twist nuts sewn into them. It's all great stuff and well worth your time to check out. His contact information is on our website at falconrytold.com. Please go there. Please drop him an email, whatever's most convenient for you, and give him a shout. It'd be well worth your time. And this episode continues on in Tucson after recording the episode with Tim that you all heard this past episode. We drove another hour to Brian Wood's house and did another recording with him fairly late in the evening, but we were able to squeeze it in and have a good time and a good conversation about different things in his falconry, like, you know, Cooper's hawks, Harris hawks, and some of the different stuff that he's done in falconry career-wise as well. So anyway, without further ado, I will go ahead and continue this Arizona Falconers Association series with Brian Wood. Here we go. Appreciate you having me. And yeah, man, as far as everything else that you've got going on, it's pretty cool always walking into other falconers' houses and seeing how they have their setups, and it's pretty cool walking in and I didn't even notice. I mean, I should have, but I didn't even notice like the kestrel at first until she started cacking at me, and then of course your owl and everything. I mean, I love those shelf perches, man. I think they're definitely the best, especially for falcons. But
It's so nice, yeah. I mean, especially clearing up table space, because they were on a little block perch sitting on the table or the counter with the micros, and get them on the wall, and they're comfy.
Yeah,
it's safe for them.
Yeah, I think that, especially for falcons, it's hard to. I mean, I've tried about every kind of perch. Especially for like smaller falcons and stuff. I mean, I've tried bow perches, I've tried pole perches, and the smaller shelf perch so far is still kind of my favorite, just because I think it does the best for their protection for their plumage and stuff.
Yep.
But
that's Carissa with the kestrel, 0 feather damage on the shelf, but she had her on a little bow and a block, and she was breaking tail feathers.
Yeah. And I initially started keeping my kestrels, like the couple that I've flown previously, I had them predominantly on a pole perch, and they would regain it fine and they would do fine on it and stuff. But I noticed eventually, like, there would always at least be a couple of tail feathers that would get snapped in half on them. And it was the most frustrating thing ever. Because otherwise, like I said, they're fine. And, I'm very minimalist when it comes to small, falcons anyway. I try my best to use, like I said, I use grommetless, anklets and very thin stuff, and everything else is fine. But like, for whatever reason, just the way that bird would want to regain that pole perch every time, it would snap.
The pole perch, I constantly have issues. I've housed the Cooper's hawk on it, and unless you have like a dedicated pre-cut tied off leash, I could never get it to be perfect every time. Sometimes I get it and she'd bait off and it would wrap around her tail, which she regained. I've currently got an Oplo on a pole perch in the other room right here, and so far he's doing well, but I'm waiting for me to just tie it just too long or just too short, and he's gonna snap a tail feather.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, for falcons in particular, I've just become more fond of the shelf perches. It just seems like they're a little bit more foolproof. So it's always nice getting other people's opinions. And
I prefer them. And if I had more wall space, I'd actually put the Oplo on one. I'd probably use one for my coops as well, but don't have enough room.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I just remodeled my basement. We were kind of talking about, all the home renovation stuff a bit ago, but I mounted both my bigger and smaller shelf perches, like in my kind of falconry room or whatever in my basement. I'm hoping to utilize them again sometime soon. But yeah, that's kind of my goal, is to kind of have at least 3 or 4 lined up. And
well, at least you've got a basement. We don't have basements in Arizona.
Yeah, it would be tougher. I can definitely see where it would be more difficult to have one here for sure.
Harder to dig, but it would stay so much cooler.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only type that I could see around here would be like more of a walkout type. If you're building on the side of, the terrain here isn't exactly conducive to digging.
Not really. It's usually solid rock or. Yeah, it's just terrible.
Yeah. I mean, but
I'm jealous though. I've always wanted a basement. And being Tucson native, and never have had one.
I mean, be careful what you wish for, man. It's not all that it's cracked up to be.
Grass is always greener.
Exactly. I mean, I would love to have a dirt yard. I mean, but I didn't have to maintain all the time. But
see, grass sounds nice to me because I'm sick of all the dust.
Well,
I could dust my house 15 times in a week and it would still be caked in dust. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said it best, grass is always greener on the other side for sure. But yeah, I mean, my plan is to have, once we start redoing our main floor, to move all of our dogs downstairs and be in the same room as the birds. So they're always socialized with each other and stuff.
That's where my Oplo is. He's on the pole perch in the dog room.
Yeah. So that's my goal eventually. But yeah, man, I mean, how long have you lived around this area? You said you lived around this area your whole life?
Yeah, I grew up 20 minutes from where we're sitting right now. My wife, Carissa, grew up same area. Didn't know each other as kids, but we're 15 minutes from the closest grocery store. So we're kind of in the boonies-ish for Tucson. But like we were speaking earlier, I wanted more land, so get out of the city. Wasn't really in the center of the city, but still in a little cookie cutter house growing up.
Yeah.
Not my cup of tea. Yeah. We've got too many animals to be doing that now.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, we live kind of just outside city limits where we're at too, but we're close to other stuff. Close enough for me anyway. I mean, like I said, it's nice. I don't mind having neighbors, but I don't know if I could go back to having neighbors like right on top of me.
Yep.
Again.
We got 1 acre lots, and that's still too close in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'd like, if I could afford it, I'd have 1,000+ acres where I didn't have to see anyone ever.
Yeah.
Literally just walk on my back door and start flying.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I would probably be like that too. The only thing about that is I would hate maintaining it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Although get out desert, I guess in your case, the woods, and just let it be natural.
Yeah. I mean, if it was woods and they had a lot of fox and gray squirrels, or mainly even just gray squirrels, I would be stoked. I could do that for sure. Like I said, man, I'm sure you're probably very similar. Like, my viewpoints on what I think is ideal has evolved a lot over the years. I mean, I would be perfectly happy flying red tails or whatever on squirrels probably for a very long time, if not ever. I mean, that's another thing that I think once you do for the first time and you discover, it's kind of hard not to have fun doing. But
it looks like a blast. I've never got to experience it.
Well, come up sometime. We'll take you.
To.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, man. But I mean, I'm sure there's lots of stuff out this way that, is probably done on a regular basis that, we don't get to do very often. We're at, once again, grass is always greener. I mean, yeah. If I could, I would move out west in a heartbeat, but I've said that several times, and
I love it out here. Honestly, I hated it when I turned 18. I wanted to get out, get away.
Yeah.
Being born and raised out here, I don't know what it's like having grass or having streams and rivers and lakes around. I mean, if I want to go fishing, the closest lake's 3 hours away. So.
Yeah, or rain or snow.
Yeah, we get rain during the monsoon, but it's not
I've seen it. It's not. It doesn't count.
Although you lived in Phoenix, so the monsoon in Phoenix isn't nearly as good as it is down south in Tucson.
Oh, I didn't realize it was all that different, honestly.
Yeah, we get quite a bit more, at least to my knowledge. I'm no meteorologist.
For about 8 months, you can predict it's going to be like 80 something degrees, and then there's
if
4
not
months.
hotter.
Yeah, there's 4 months where it's going to be like 120. And
Yeah,
you know,
I'm already whining. It's not even 100 degrees. We've hit 100-degree day, and I'm sick of the heat.
well, I mean, as far as how hard is it for you to maintain all of your birds and stuff out here? I mean, is it?
I mean, one of the reasons why I fly the species I do is our environment.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, I want to fly accipiters on after quail, and my dream is to do it with a goshawk. I haven't flown a goshawk yet because I'm afraid of killing one in the heat in the summer. All of my mentors have said probably shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But flying a Cooper's hawk, flying the Harris's hawks, I mean, even when I've had falcons, the red nape Shaheen that we've got, they're pretty heat tolerant. They're from dry, arid climates, and they can handle it. We still, our mews have big open windows, a lot of airflow, make sure they're not wrapped up. In fact, I was just talking to someone else who's like, "Oh, put a bunch of shade cloth over your window," and I'm like, too afraid of it blocking up and becoming a hot box in there. Nate Danforth is flying a goshawk, and he did it through the season, and it showed me he can do it. I could probably make it work, but he hopefully has found the answer to housing a goss through the molt. And we're in the process. He's building it. I'm just helping. Building what is it called?
Climate controlled.
It's like an Adobe Earth.
Oh, like one of those
like
Earth Dome things.
Yeah, Earth Dome. Here we go.
Yeah.
And hopefully it can keep it 20 plus degrees cooler in there. But yeah, other than that, we pick the species that can handle it, unless you want to molt them inside.
Yeah.
But even then, when it is 115 degrees in the middle of June, in July, if your AC fails and you got a cold climate bird inside, it'll be 90 degrees in less than an hour. So
there is that too.
It's tough.
I bet it's not easy for sure. Yeah, I mean, I can see where it would pose challenges for a lot of species for sure.
Yep.
I mean, even the ones that are used to it, I mean, it's still gonna fry.
Yeah. The first couple years as a falconer, I was terrified to go out, and my Harris is sitting there just panting, wings drooped. You're like, oh my gosh, is he gonna die? But then you drive around town and you see all the wild ones sitting in the shade of trees, panting with wings drooped. They're just hot. Mm-hmm. But they got water, they got airflow, and on the super hot days, I mean, we've had days 118 plus. I usually bring my birds in.
Yeah,
I got my living room's lined with boxes, and I got birds on perches, and I try to keep my house under 80 degrees if my AC can do it. So at least it's.
How many wild Harrises do you see around here? Are they pretty common around here?
They're real prevalent. Yeah. If you're leaving here tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
On your way out, just scan the tops of saguaros on the drive. You'll probably see some, especially this time of year. I've trapped a Harris 10 feet behind you out my window there. It's hard not to take that for granted because, Harris's hawks are one of the most popular species flown today. Mm-hmm. And you just drive around town, you can watch them hunting together, and they're so prevalent out here that it's not uncommon during the season to have a wild juvenile join in on a slip with your own Harris's hawks. So
nice. Yeah. I mean, it's something fun that we occasionally do too. There's lots of juvie redtails that'll come in and watch your bird flying or whatever. And then, whenever you're done, sometimes it's fun just to keep kicking, just to see if you can kick up something for the juvies, and you kind of naturally, start hunting them and stuff. So, it's kind of fun to see that interaction happen so naturally sometimes. They just get so used to people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, Harris, being as social as they are, is probably the same type of deal.
Oh man. Yeah. Some of the Harrises in the urban environments here. I've trapped some literally walking up to a Harris closer than I am to you right now and setting a trap on the ground and walk away 5 feet and it's on the trap.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me one bit. Yeah. I may have to come back out here sometime. And as we were discussing earlier, that's kind of one of the things that I still want to do is fly a Passage Harris. And well, obviously they're not where I'm at. So it like I said, I'd have to come out and do that and make a trip and make something of it. It's the one type of Harris I'm not. I mean, I've flown, as we were talking about earlier, imprint, chamber race and stuff, but I still haven't flown a passage, and I want to kind of complete that learning experience.
I think you should, man. I've seen so many captive bred Harrises fly, and not that they can't be impressive. They can be exceptional hunters, but they all pale in comparison to a passage. And we've had a handful of people come to Tucson and trap them, and when they get back and get them hunting, they usually reach back out to us and say, "Man, like, this is the best bird I've ever flown." They're different, and there's not a lot written about the passage Harris. Most of the stuff that I've read about them isn't accurate from what I've experienced with them and what my group of friends have experienced with them. It's much different than what's written.
Well, I mean, so, do you think that's more of a credit towards just sample size, or do you think that's really just something that, it hasn't been kind of encompassed because, just like you said, simple fact that it's not really been well publicized?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, the sample size, just my close-knit group of friends, it's my wife, Carissa, and I, and then our best friends, Nate and Amber Danforth. We're dubbed the Super Friends by their sponsor. The Tucson Mini Meat Super Friends is what we were called. But, between just the four of us, there's been over a dozen Passage Harris's hawks flown. And as we were speaking earlier, I think one of those was kind of just an okay hunter. The rest were, pretty exceptional at what they did. And that's just with our friend groups. I've seen multiple falconers in Tucson, Phoenix have had exceptional birds too. So hard to say. I know it's a great question.
Yeah. Well, some of those questions are, kind of impossible to answer in their own way, but, because there's so many X factors and different, factors to take into consideration, with who's ranging from who's flying, how they train, how often do they hunt, so on and so forth. And there's so many different things and variables. So whenever you're judging that too, and what one person's perception of a dynamite bird would be varies from person to person too.
That is very true. And our small friend group, we go hard. We try to fly our birds 7 days a week if life allows.
Nice.
We found careers that allowed us to do so. So most people can't do that. So I'm sure flying as hard as we do helps bring out the most in a bird.
Sure. Yeah. If you fly almost every day a week, your bird's going to be that much more fit and more down with the routine, of it. And
in fact, you fly them that much, then weight usually isn't even a factor. It's time to hunt. They're just going to hunt. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and because that's just what they're used to. And they're used to doing that about every day in the wild and stuff. And if you're trying to keep them as much close to a natural routine as possible, they're going to be that much better for it too, for sure.
Yep.
I can see where that would be even that much more important, especially if you guys hunt together and you have a bunch of passage birds that you're flying together in casts and stuff. I can see where that would just be, it would be hard to mess one up that way.
It is. However, contrary to what people think with the Harrises and what most Harris hawkers do, we prefer to fly solo. And when we get a new passage bird, we actually would train it, hunt with it. What I've told my apprentices, and it's not like a set number or anything, but try to get a dozen kills solo. Build that relationship with that bird before you start going into a cast. So that bird's looking to you and not just the other Harrises in the field. And even then, it's a blast flying with your friends in a cast, and we did have amazing times flying together, but my best times in the field were by myself with me and my bird, seeing them do it. So
yeah, and I can understand that too. That's a kind of a cool approach, though. I've heard other guys that have different ways they've gone about training, their Harrises and stuff too, and I can see where with a passage bird in particular, that would be more important to do some solo stuff first, just so they establish their relationship with you first.
Yep.
I can understand where that would be more important than even with like a chamber bird.
Yeah,
in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're so used to working as a family group already. So if you start throwing them with another bird, they're all just going to, why do I need you? I've got other Harrises around to follow. So
yeah. And they already kind of have their social hierarchy and their group established as it is anyway.
Yep.
So kind of, getting them out of that, whatever habit they already have established first, I can see where that would be more important initially. Yeah. So like I said, I need the experience still. I really do.
Yeah, I totally think you should. And
Yeah.
when you decide, man, I'd love to see it happen. So
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, we'll talk more after this is over about that, because like I said, there's some things that I'm still kind of mulling over with that, but I always keep my options. I don't know how you are, man, but it seems like fortune very rarely ever favors me in any kind of planning,
Yep.
pre-planning. So
I'm gonna knock on wood here. I lucked out this past year. I plan on flying an imprint coops. I pulled a baby in it. So far, it's worked out really well. We had a outrageously successful season, but usually it's I don't know what I'm doing until I'm doing it, because things never go the way you plan.
for sure. Yeah. And especially with my contract, work agreements, possibly ranging anywhere, and or several different states in the country. The last couple of years, it's been tough. And I mean, at least with what you do, it's, unless there's just something that goes wrong with a bird that you have or something, whether it be sickness or just sudden random, quirky fluke,
Which I've had.
Yeah. Well, it's part of being a falconer.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, at least you have that to kind of keep you going. I mean, and with the abatement stuff and with the other stuff that you do, I mean, like I said, it's worked out, I'm sure, to where at least for the most part, at least the availability aspect hasn't necessarily been an issue. Kind
of. Honestly, when I did the abatement, I was commuting 220 miles a day to go to, the resort work was up in Phoenix, and I live in Tucson, 110 miles one way, but I'd bring my falconry bird with me, and the Casa Grande area, which is right between Tucson and Phoenix, it's wonderful hunting. Talking about how you view things differently. I used to think it was hideous landscape. Who would ever want to live there? Now I drive by and it's a glorious, glorious place to fly. It's flat, nothing but desert thorn, which looks like sage. It's nice. So I made it work, but I mean, I was commuting 4 hours a day, working 8 hours a day. So it's 12 hours of what I put in just to work, but I made it work to fly.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I can see where that would be more doable on a typical diurnal schedule.
Yes. You were doing graveyards?
Yeah. And the most I've been able to commute going back and forth for work has been about an hour and a half working nights. I mean, I tried doing it kind of like on a 2 hour, limit, and there's just something about that second hour after a night shift. Like I can do an hour and 15 hour and a half, but man, that second hour on the drive, after a night shift, it just, I discovered I just couldn't push through it.
I was usually dead when I was done hawking. And I mean, I was working through the day.
Well, so. and it's so hot too, I mean, getting drained from that, doing the abatement work in some of these areas.
Luckily, we're not hunting when it is 115, although working in Phoenix, you can be 120 plus.
Yeah, I can only imagine, man.
But yeah, luckily, we're only hitting 80 degrees during the season.
Sure, yeah.
Still hot.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, whenever you're still doing the abatement work up there, I mean, was that typically during, like, what months out of the year?
It was year round.
Yeah. Well, okay. So it wasn't just a certain, group of months. It was all 12 months.
Yeah, it was 12 months a year. Yeah. For those two contracts that I was working. Yeah. But like I said, I haven't worked those for over 3 years now, not since the pandemic shut the world down.
And what were you mainly trying to scare off? Was it like pigeons?
Grackles and pigeons. So one of the resorts, it was strictly pigeons, and the other resort was 98% grackles. There was a handful of pigeons, but honestly, doing that kind of stuff, the grackles are much harder than pigeons. They're so much more intelligent and really test you and keep you on your toes. I enjoyed it, but man, getting the same 4 questions by 300 people every single day, every hour of every single day, can drive you nuts. Now, now I'm co-owner of Sky Island Falconry Experience with my wife and then our best friends Nate and Amber Danforth. Now we do falconry education and displays like that. It's the people that come there; they're there to learn, and the questions that they ask are wonderful. It's fun.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
It's not easy. Nothing is, but
well, yeah. I mean, It's anything that you do in regards to having any kind of wildlife and the maintenance involved, and making sure everything is properly maintained, and just hoping that nothing goes wrong in the process. I mean, I've done, with our group of guys, in Southern Indiana, I've helped do exhibitions and some education stuff before I've done stuff ranging from, my kids' scout group, when they were even littler, and just some other stuff at like a local park and whatever. And anytime things go even remotely as planned, it's a win.
Yep.
Yeah, because a lot of times they don't.
We've been lucky that the vast majority, and I'm going to knock on some wood here, the vast majority have gone really well, really well. Actually, I think the worst program we had was last month. We did a program for a middle school here in town. There were 650 kids or something like that. It was a huge group, I think the largest group I've ever done. And of course, it was the end of March, so I guess it was a month and a half ago. Nesting ravens were in the area. We didn't know, and let the bird fly, and he flew up to a pine tree and just got mobbed just by 2. But talk about embarrassing. You're just sitting there swinging a lure, whistling like an idiot.
Yeah.
And your bird's not doing anything, and you got 600 plus middle schoolers just judging you and talking smack.
Yeah.
He came down just a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that being in front of a whole bunch of very opinionated pre-adolescent kids is not always the most fun thing when things go wrong, but
yeah, when it goes well, it can be a lot of fun. They really enjoy it, but
sure,
usually it does. Like I said, usually it goes well.
I'm sure. Well, I mean, it sounds like at least you're getting to do something you want to do and is kind of enjoyable,
It's absolutely. Before getting into the industry, doing abatement or the falconry school stuff, I was a plumber and worked for my dad. He's a plumbing contractor. I dreaded going to work every single day. I hated it. I really enjoyed working with my dad, but the work I did not like. And I mean, it's hard labor when it's hot out here. It's still work. I still wake up and it's like, ugh, I gotta go. I gotta do it. But when I do it, it's fun. I enjoy it. It can actually if I'm having a bad day, I can go. If I have a really good group of people that are fun to teach and really willing to learn, it can turn my bad mood into a great mood and have a good day. So yeah, really lucky to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and even the days that you are in a bad mood, I'm sure that, like you kind of just said, it's probably easier to get your game face on, so to speak, because you have to remind yourself too that as co-owner of a business like that, how you present yourself and everything's going to largely depend on continuing to get more people into.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's always that.
We're solely a tourist type of attraction type thing. Easy for me to say. Yeah, if I'm just an a-hole to our guests, I'm probably not going to get a lot of repeat business.
No, probably not. Not going to get those 5 stars on Yelp or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool though, man. I mean, I admire anybody that's able to do, kind of, something on their own, and work for themselves and make it work. I mean, it's something that I hope somehow or another will be in the cards for me someday.
Man, just gotta make it happen.
Well, I know, man. It's just
not easy.
No, it's a lot.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah. It's easier said than done, and it's always. I'm sure it's probably very similar in a lot of regards to anything else. The hardest part is just starting it. Yeah,
yep.
But
starting it, and I mean, running a business this day and age is a little crazy.
Yeah.
Especially we launched literally February is when we got our permit. February of 2020.
Yeah.
1 month before the world shut down. Best time in the world to try to start
anything.
Yeah, a business in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's whatever. Now you're doing what you need to do, and looks like you're having fun doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest thing I was worried about, even doing the abatement, was getting burnt out. I didn't want to ruin my falconry because I wanted to become a falconer for 15 years before I finally got my license, and I was afraid it might. I didn't think it would, but I was afraid. Just back of my head, you never know. Just do it too much, but no, it actually sparked the fire even more. I just try to keep going and see how much more I can accomplish with the sport.
Yeah, Plenty of time, man. Well, we hope there's plenty of time anyway for all of us.
All we can do is hope, right?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like as far as your introduction into all of it, I mean, what was it that initially got you interested in it all, and kind of got you?
I've been a bird nerd since I can remember. I really think what got me into birds in general was I've always been fascinated by flight. Always wanted to be able to fly. So if you could have any superpower, what could it be? I could fly when I was a kid. That was it. I was the kid. I'd set up little live bird traps, little, not elevator traps, but it's got the little lever and shuts the door behind them, or a milk crate with a stick and a string. I'd used to catch birds all the time. When I was, 8 or 9, I had a little logbook of what bait I use, bread, bird seed, what have you, what time of day it was, what bird it was that I caught, and then when you catch a bird, I'd reach in and grab it, and they'd always lose feathers out of stress, and I'd tape a feather there. Definitely not legal to do, but I was 8, so I was a young kid, but was doing that. I think I was 10. My dad was driving me to school, and there was an ornithologist from the U of A who had trapped a family of Harrises doing research. My dad drove by this guy who had a Harris hawk in his hand, and I was super geeked. And my dad stopped and let me talk to this gentleman. Probably bugged the crap out of him, a little 10-year-old with question after question after question. But the guy listened, answered all of my questions, and he let me hold one. I held my hands around it like a football and tossed it in the air to release it back. And from that day on, I wanted to do that. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I wanted to work with birds of prey. And from basically 10 on, it was raptors. So birds to begin with, and then raptors about 10. Of course, read My Side of the Mountain, got on the internet and started reading and learned that falconry was a thing. Begged my parents to let me do it. They said no. I'm glad they did. I was really immature as a kid, had too much fun, and I probably wouldn't have stuck with it had I started at 12 or 14. But yeah, took me till I was 25. What really sparked the fire again was Facebook. I was on Facebook, and it was people you may know. And there was a gentleman here in Tucson. His name is Eric, and his profile picture with him with a Harris. I sent him a message. It's like, hey, you don't know who I am, but I've always been interested in the sport. Can I pick your brain? And like most falconers, he was super welcoming. Invited me to his house, let me borrow a bunch of books. He took me on a hunt, and within 3 months, I was licensed. So
nice.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I know. It kind of varies from state to state as far as how early you can technically, start an apprenticeship. I think it's like 12 now in Indiana.
It's 12 in Arizona now.
Is it?
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like I've had this conversation with a lot of guys, and I don't know if part of me wishes that I could have started in it earlier than what I did, because I think I was technically like right at 30 or 31, and I started getting out with guys, I think, of course, this full season before, I was out every weekend with them, pretty much for a full season. Right. Yeah. The way you really should do it, for sure. In my humble opinion anyway. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like you said, I think it takes a lot of, retrospection, like a real retrospection, be able to look back and say, yeah, it's probably for the best that I didn't get started sooner.
I would have failed. Just, I wasn't responsible enough. So
yeah. And that's one thing that is definitely a must, and it's not negotiable with all of this, is a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. Luckily, I mean, I was immature for quite a while. I had too much fun out of high school too.
Yeah.
But if my mom was worried, she kept saying like, "Oh, you're just not doing anything with your life." I got my falconry license at 25, and I turned my life around.
Yeah. Catalyst for a lot of positive changes. Yep. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stories like that. That's good though. I mean, I'm glad it worked out for you. It's like I said, it's something that once you get into, you can't not make a large priority, so.
Yeah, took over my life completely.
Well, sounds like for the better, so that's good. But I mean, so what kind of, path did you start off with? Were you like a lot of guys that started off with like a red tail, or what did you end up flying first?
So, I mean, in Arizona, they're really liberal on what species can be flown as an apprentice. I started with a Harris, like most Arizona apprentices do.
Right. Mm-hmm.
My sponsor, really awesome sponsor, was kind of easygoing. He asked me what I wanted to fly. I told him I wanted a male Harris because I wanted to be able to catch quail. That was always been a goal. And I said, but I just want a bird, so I'd be happy with a female too. And I was like, if we can't catch that, I'd be happy with a red tail too.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted a bird. But yeah, I wanted a male Harris. First passage we saw in the morning we were trapping was a male Harris. Dropped a trap. I was literally home within 15 minutes of, again, talking about how prevalent Harrises are. Mm-hmm. I mean, did some scouting. I knew where they were going to be hanging out, but literally left my house, and 15 minutes later, I was home with a bird in my hand. So
nice.
But yeah, started with the male Harris. I flew him all through my apprenticeship. So he was the one that kind of random fluke just died on me. It was after his 4th season, so I flew him for 4 seasons. We accomplished a lot. Didn't get quail. That's what I kind of wanted, but never got quail. That's not true. My very first quail was caught at the NAFA meet in Lubbock in 2018 with that bird. It was a bobwhite. But that's the only thing, a fluke catch. But he died in his muse in August of 2019, overnight. I even paid for necropsy, no definitive cause, no idea what happened. However, I don't want to say his death was a blessing, but the year that he died, I was raising my first imprint coops. Had he not passed, I probably wouldn't have done as well with my coops because the coops is hard.
Yeah.
I struggled with him. Again, I wanted to catch quail, so I'm going to do an imprint coops. That's going to do it. And had I still had my awesome male Harris to fall back on, I probably would have been like, all right, screw the coops for now. I'm going to go fly the Harris and go have some fun because it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Don't think there's much debate on that for sure.
Yeah. Had he been alive, I probably wouldn't have done as well with my first coops. I mean, if you're on social media, I'm sure you've seen my photos of Marty McFly. He was posted a lot. I was proud of what I was able to do with him. And yeah, that triggered my addiction for accipiters on quail.
Like we've talked about, I don't know, like I really haven't had a ton of success. I mean, I've flown a Sharpie and had some success. I've, tried a few coops and just, it just hasn't worked out yet. But it's one of those things that I really want to at least be successful with once, just to have the positive experience.
To have done it, yeah.
As of right now, I mean, there was a brief moment in time where I was going to try to get a hybrid, larger species, like European, North American hybrid goshawk to maybe try on squirrels and stuff.
Fun.
And, but my new septic system kind of put a crimp in those plans.
Easy to do because they're not cheap.
Yeah. Well, and everybody around me, all my buddies fly goshawks, so it's like I've been overexposed. I've said this many times too. I've been overexposed to goshawks basically since day one, basically. So I don't have like the extra fascination or need, to necessarily fly because I see them fly all the time as it is anyway. But yeah, the coop thing, man, it still is kind of that that enigma for me, I guess, as it is, I think, for a lot of falconers. But
yeah, you got to be a bit of a masochist to want to fly them. And they're not easy. They're not hard. The biggest thing, and we've touched on it earlier, it's the amount of time you can fly them. I think the only thing that it takes to do it, to make it easier, is to fly them every day. Mm-hmm. If you can't fly them 5 days a week. Yeah. It's probably not a species you should be flying right now.
Yeah. Heard that from multiple people.
Yeah, I do my best. I've raised 2 imprint coops now. Both of them were very successful. And both of them, for the first 6 months, I didn't miss a single day. I was out in the field 7 days a week. I'd start in July. I started hunting my imprint female this last season. July 8th was the first day. I say hunting. It's when we moved our training outside. I did baggies. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, July in Arizona, it's 105 degrees at 7 a.m. And we'd be out there at first light. And, yeah, that's the hardest part, is the commitment of just being out every day. I mean, we were in the field from July to March over 200 days.
Yeah.
And I noticed it when I took a day off, especially after that first 6 or so months. When I took a day off, she was not happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I've heard from multiple guys that, I mean, especially if an imprint, if you, with an imprint coop, you really need to be able to fly almost every day, each week. And when you stop, that's when the problems usually start.
Yep. Although I've tried following the methods. I've had a lot of advice, and I don't think there is a method. I don't think there's a way to do it. It's so much dependent on the bird. I think I haven't been around so many goshawks, but from what I've seen with accipiters in general, it's just being able to adjust, like being able to read that bird and adjust accordingly.
Reading the bird is always,
it's any species.
Yeah, it's in any species for sure, but it's even more important because there's a lot of guys that have a hard time reading accipiters for sure.
Yeah, well, they are just like McDermott says, a coops is just a flying lizard. And honestly, flying Marty McFly, my very first imprint coops, I wanted to chase quail. I didn't have dogs. I didn't have anything. Just, I'm going to get a coops. In fact, Nate climbed the tree for me. He pulled it for me. I pulled him for me. I raised him, and I chased quail without a dog. And I will never do that again. We caught 46 quail without a dog. And I don't know if you've ever chased desert quail, but
that's pretty impressive, actually.
Finding them in general is really difficult. And then once they're pursued, if they don't catch it on the initial flight, they are ratty. They hide. They're really hard to find again. Mm-hmm. So most of my hunts with that coops was find the cubby, usually to listen. You hear him chittering or something. Find the cubby, flush him. The male coops flew at 250 grams. He's tiny. If he did hit him on the rise, he couldn't hold on. But I'd have to go find a reflush, and I was sprinting. Every slip, sprinting. So I was in good shape. But when the coops got upset, he come at me. He hit my face one time, and it was August that first year. I got a tiny little scratch on my cheek. I learned that, again, learning to read the behavior. I learned what that looked like, and I never let it happen again. Mm-hmm. I could have, and he absolutely would have been a face grabber had I not learned that behavior, but I just never let it happen again. In fact, Jamaica and Greg Smith have dubbed a move the Brian after me. When the coops is angry, I have him on my glove and I shoot my arm straight up and look straight down. It almost looks like you're doing like the disco move. And that was just so I didn't get hit in the face. But with the second imprint coops, Sarah, my female right now, I raised her. I had my Vizsla Ruger. I had my setter Quill. And Tyler Sladen was kind enough to let Nate and I borrow his Vizsla trigger. So she was raised with dogs, and she never spent. Actually, I went hunting one time without dogs. All of them were injured, and I was like, "Yep, this is why I don't do this." But when she got upset, she'd go hit the dogs, and I mean, it's sad that your hawk is hitting the dog, but it's not me.
Yeah.
And the dogs, I mean, Ruger, my Vizsla, he'll literally just stand there look at me like, "Really? Like, is the bird gonna do anything?" She's just hanging on my face, and it wasn't every single hunt, but it was nice that there was something other than me. So there was still aggression that I dealt with, but it was manageable. Yeah, the difference, I caught over double the amount of quail with dogs than I did the season without. And when I flew without again, it was sprinting, and then add dogs to the equation, and it's a nice stroll through the desert, and the dogs will go point, and then I flush, and the dogs can relocate if I need to. And out here, if the quail are ratty and go into a rat's nest, my Vizsla and Tyler's Vizsla would actually dig the rat's nest up if we tell them to. I did my best not to dig them out of nests. It's hard when you're just like, I want that quail.
Yeah.
But
well, and especially if you're trying to enter a new bird and they really need.
Yeah. The beginning, I was absolutely like, I don't really care. I want her to be successful. I'm gonna get her a quail pretty much no matter what it takes. However, I didn't need too much in the beginning because we have a really extended quail season in Arizona. It opens July 1st, so I can be hunting quail in the hellacious heat if I want to. But it was really extended for falconry, specifically for raising an IS, which we're lucky to have. And the young quail, I mean, she was catching those on the rise. She was catching those on the initial flight. Once October came around, that diminished a lot, catching them on the rise.
Yeah.
It was usually 2 or 3 reflushes to nail those quail.
Yeah, well, like I said, it sounds like, I mean, well, obviously it's a lot of work, but yeah, I'm sure that doing that in, 100 and whatever degree, ovens really isn't.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
In fact, I lucked out this year. a friend of ours, I met a guy. He's a quail guide. His name's Jacob. And you can't legally pursue quail with your dogs out of season. So being a shotgun hunter, he could not run his dogs out after wild birds until October. But if he came with me, he could run his dogs at quail for my hawk because it was open season for falconry. And I wanted to put as many dogs as I could under that hawk. So it didn't matter who was there. If I had all my dogs were injured, I could hunt quail with a dog. So I had him join me, and it's hard to find someone willing to join you in the oven heat every day. And that Jacob joined me in the summer. He was with me probably 4 or 5 days a week, every morning. It's at first light. And then gun season opened up and he did his own thing. But yeah, I did my best to, I invited anyone that was interested. I even made a Facebook post. If you want to see how we do these things, come out. I want my coops to accept people.
What did you do different then from your first attempt to, the second bird differently to, I don't know, try and curb any kind of issues or anything? Is there anything that you did different from one bird to the next?
Yes. Whether I could pinpoint exactly what it was, I don't know. The biggest thing is I followed the imprint exhibitor as much to a T as I could on my first bird. And I don't know if it's because it was a Western subspecies, and in that book, he's even reaching out to him, he says, just fly an Eastern. They're easier to manage. Couldn't get it to do what the book said to do. So the next one, I was like, I'm going to try again, but I'm not going to try to follow it to a T. I'm just going to kind of go with what the bird tells me. Again, reading the bird's behavior and just adjusting. And doing it the second time. I mean, I hope I can fly this coops for years and years and years. It's my goal. Keep her alive and hunt quail. But if she passes and I fly another one, I will absolutely do things differently next time too. I don't know what though. I don't know. Can't really put my finger on what exactly I did different.
Just depends on what you read from the bird.
Yep.
So you're just trying to kind of going more by what, the skills that you've learned and just, knowing what you know, going with the flow as opposed to trying to just force a specific formula on something then.
The biggest thing that I think that helped, well, my first bird was trying to get as many people out in the field with me every day that I could. Because exhibitors are known, like, nope, can't have anyone, can't have any special colors, can't wear a hat, can't do this. And I invited everyone, my nieces and nephews, my friends. It's hard to get people to come, but anyone that could. And then the second bird, the second coops, I did the same thing, but also did that with dogs. If you can control your dog and you can whoa your dog on command, please bring it.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, it makes sense. Yeah. I mean, McDermott's book and, kind of that formula, I think, is still the closest thing that probably most people have come to kind of having a recipe, so to speak.
That's what they call it. Yeah. I don't like the term recipe because a recipe you follow to a T. And again, with that book, I couldn't. The bird didn't allow me to. Yeah.
And, and there's always going to be certain things in written works, books or whatever, that, it's not always going to be able to be applicable because every bird's different.
Yeah. Now, I'm not trying to talk smack about the book.
No.
It was a godsend. So much help in there. No.
Like I said, I know Mike. Like I said, there's been things that I've, asked him about too. That I think I think that most authors, if they're being honest with themselves, would probably make adjustments here and there if it was that simple to just every single time publish a new edition.
Yeah, right.
But no. Like I said, there's a lot of good information in there for sure. Like I said, as far as just any other experiences that you've had though, so I can't remember. Did you say you had or hadn't tried a passage?
So actually I did. I kind of skipped that in what birds I had flown. I did the standard, I became a general falconer. Let's fly a Cooper's hawk. I got my general's license in October. So I got my upgrade in October. It was too late to pull an IS. So I was like, I'm just trap a passage. Everyone says don't trap a late passage. Oh, screw it. I did well with a Harris hawk. Big deal. So I trapped a passage female. It was October 21st or something like that. I flew her for 3 months. She broke almost every feather in her tail. We did catch game. We caught a dozen head. I wanted to catch quail again. That was my goal. I want to catch quail. She had no interest in feather. She would not chase a single quail I put up in front of her. But she did catch rabbits, a couple squirrels, and a rat. My sponsor, it was late February. My sponsor helped me imp her tail, and I released her. It was cool. I couldn't find enough Cooper's Hawk feathers to imp her entire train back as a Cooper's Hawk, so her 2 deck feathers were red-tailed feathers. We just trimmed them to fit, and it was cool because where I released her, kept seeing her. I know she survived at least through the molt. Yeah, so you could say it was successful because we caught game, and that's falconry is catching game. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't what I wanted, so it was a failure in my book because I wanted to catch quail. But she didn't die, and we caught things. So yeah, I've flown one passage. Because she was so turned off to feather, I was like, I'm not going to do a passage again. Like, I don't want a bird that's already entered on something and wedded to a prey item that I don't want to chase.
Makes sense.
I'm going to hunt rabbits. I'm going to fly hares.
Yeah.
It's just...
No, I understand. Yeah, I mean, I can understand where that would be, and it's a reasonable thing too. I mean, that's the one benefit to having an imprint is, that thing is only going to learn what you teach it.
Yep.
And, if you don't want it to be wed to a certain type of thing, then you don't have to introduce it to it. And odds are it's not going to.
In fact, my current coops, Sarah, she will basically ignore everything but quail. She caught 3 rabbits out of 120 head of game this year. She caught 3 rabbits. And it was just, we had walked 5 miles and not found a covey. But yeah, having that imprint, her first, 50 plus head of game was quail.
Yeah.
So it really helps.
Yeah.
So wedded to that.
Yeah, I can understand where, like I said, just having that amount of slips and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm always curious to see what people's experience with coops in particular are, and what they learned different as far as the passage versus the imprint too, and what they learned from both of those, and if there was any different way that they went about their approach to them, because like I said, most people just don't have very good success with them.
Yeah,
so.
I tried the passage. I tried to train it like a Harris because that's the only knowledge I had coming from an apprenticeship, coming from being an apprentice who had only flown a single male Harris. So I was like, oh, it's the same thing, right? Yeah. It worked. She had a recall. She come to a lure, but it just not the same at all. But it did work to an extent.
Yeah.
I've told myself even before I got this last imprint, I'm going to do a brancher or a soarhawk. That way I shouldn't deal with much aggression and I can still enter it with what I want. Didn't actually happen, but I ended up pulling a baby. But
yeah.
Still, one day I'll fly a brancher or a soarhawk and see how that goes.
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews on that too.
Yep.
But whatever. I think Cooper's Hawks are always going to have that kind of mixed bag as far as opinions and experience.
It's just the bird you get too.
Yeah, for sure.
I've heard there's some that are just sweet as can be.
Sure.
And others that will eat your face at any given chance. So
yeah, I think, and like you said, that's kind of every species too, but it's just what percentage.
Yeah, I think Coops is just a higher percentage of psychos. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as far as the other types of birds, just in general that you've flown, as far as your education and or other experience, what's kind of been your other favorites to fly, if in any capacity?
My knowledge and my experience with a high flying falcon. Can't even say high flying falcon, but a falcon that I guess could fly high. Mm-hmm. I raised the imprint red nape, and his first year, oh my goodness, so much fun. He was really quiet actually. I got him stooping. He's a program lure stooping bird. Really, I toss pigeons for him too, but so he only goes up about 150 feet. But watching a falcon stoop, even 150 feet up and stoop coming in 90 plus mile an hour, I've done it well over 100 times, and I still get giddy just watching that teardrop from such a low height even. So that's fun. And I'd like to dabble more in a long wing. Especially I'd really like to try a long wing on Mern's quail. They hold tight enough, and I think get them in open enough country to get it. Again, I'm all about the quail apparently. So yeah, I really enjoyed flying him. Other than that, I haven't had that much experience. I've flown a couple red tails. We trained one for our business for doing hawk walks. We wanted to, hey, the most prevalent bird of prey in North America. Let's show people what that looks like. And she was doing well. She really liked reptiles, and she caught Gila monsters. She caught a couple snakes, and then she caught a rattlesnake. Didn't get it by the head well, and it bit her in the face, and it killed her. So that was she was beautiful too. Dark morph red tail. I've flown a couple passage red tails for a short time. But if I'm going to hunt rabbits out here, I'd rather fly a Harris. So most of my experience has been Harris, and then the few coops I've flown.
Gotcha. Well, cool, man. Well, like I said, before we end up wrapping up, we'll do like we usually do. And, if you don't mind, man, just share a couple of, or one in particular, if you've got one, one of your most notable like hunting stories or experience with one of the birds that you've had. And then we'll wrap shortly after that and call it good.
Yeah, that's a tough question, man.
Most people say that.
Yeah, that's hard to pick one.
Everybody usually has at least one or two that are prevalent and come to mind.
I mean, the biggest one that really sticks, it wasn't even the most exciting of flights, but I had a goal with this coops I wanted to catch all 3 species of quail in Arizona, and Mearns quail are a sought after species. Not many falconers have actually caught one. And my first time going after him, we doubled, and I was like, well, that was freaking amazing. The second time we went, and she limited, which is 3 quail in Arizona. It's a limit. And again, not the most exciting of flights, but watching your dog walk up in the high grass, walking over and getting a foot flush. She didn't catch any one of those 3 on the initial flight. She was so close on all 3 of them. But yeah, I was with Jacob that day. His setter locked up on point. I rush over. I had to fight to get Sarah to ride my glove. when she finally was on my glove, I rush over, foot flush it. She was on its ass the whole flight. It puts into the grass again. And then my dog, my Vizsla Ruger, finds it and get a second flush. She nails it. It's like, awesome. Trade her off. It's like, well, we're 1.5 miles from the truck. Let's see if we can find more on the way back. And 50 yards later, another one of Jacob's dogs locks up on point. We flush it. Same thing. She was tears after it, misses. And then Tyler's Vizsla locks up on point on the refind and hits it again on the second reflush. And it's like, holy crap, we doubled again. It doesn't happen very often with Mearns quail and falconry. And then I was happy. It's like, well, I'm good. We can go home. Like, caught 2 Mearns quail today. And Jacob was like, really? You're not going to go for a limit? I'm like, really? It's like, all right, well, we'll go the long route back to the truck. And lo and behold, another probably 100 yards or so, and found another covey. I don't remember what dog locked up on point that time, but flush it. And yeah, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Tail chase, foot flush on a Mearns quail with a Cooper's hawk, goshawk, an accipiter in general. And seeing it 3 times in a row and all of them ending in a catch. That's, one of the highest of the highs I've had with falconry. Yeah,
those days are what is pretty much the reason why we continue to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, it beats all the crap we deal with when it gets bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that. I don't know, that heroin fix, I guess, so to speak. Always pursuing that.
You're chasing the dragon, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's man. Like I said, it's great whenever it works out, and whenever it works out well, it's just amazing. There's really nothing else like it. So
I have tons of stories, but that one right there is hard to beat. And nice. Again, not even the best of flights, but just all around a great day.
Nice. Well, just in the experience that you've had then, before we wrap up, I'm always interested to get people's opinion on, or what they think the best piece of advice that they've been given, or, as far as what they would like to give, what they've learned in their experience, to either current generation of falconers or people thinking about getting in or anything like that. And
I mean, it's really cliche, but I mean, you get in, or you get out of your bird what you put in. And our friends we always talk about is just, it doesn't take much, just takes effort. That's pretty much my thing. It's just, you got to know it takes work. It's not hard. It's not easy, but if you just put in the work, you'll be able to do it.
Yeah. No, and that's, like I said, that's another one of those things that I think that people can't hear enough. You know, you can't expect amazing results out of something you're putting minimal effort into.
Yeah.
You know, especially with these birds, man, you know.
Any of these birds, yeah. It takes work, but it's worth it. Like you said, those highs are hard to beat.
For sure. Well, cool, man. I think that's a good note that we can go ahead and wrap on. It's getting late, and you know, I want to be ready to head to bed soon, man.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. You did a lot of driving today.
Yeah, it's been a long day, and like I said, I appreciate you though. And
yeah, thanks for having me on. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and like I said, hopefully, you know, we'll talk more later. Like I said, but if I do end up doing trying to get a passage Harris, I'll see if maybe I can swing a trip out here or something.
Should. Tucson's a terrible place to get a Harris. Never mind. There's none here. I'm just kidding. Arizona birds are nice.
Cool, man. Well, like I said, thank you again, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Man.